welcome to the Sports Note for Tuesday, February 20th. First time I've actually done one of these in the office in quite a while, but couldn't really sit on this one too long. Man, have we had some crazy games ongoing here in the NHL just over the last weekend. Now, remember, the All-Star break was last week, so with the NBA being this past weekend, the NHL always likes to capitalize coming right out of the President's Day holiday. So they typically schedule something big earlier in the day of the NBA All-Star game. We actually saw that with the Stadium Series this weekend, a couple of really good games between the Flyers and Devils, and then a massive comeback from the Rangers over my New York Islanders, unfortunately enough, earlier in the afternoon on Sunday. And then on Monday for President's Day, they scheduled a bunch of matinees. You had the Sabres and Ducks facing off at 1. You had the Blues and at 12:30. The Blues and the Leafs faced off at 1. You had Calgary and Winnipeg facing off at 4. But the strangest and one of the certainly the most entertaining game of not only the day and the entire 3-day microcosm, but quite possibly the entire season was between the Minnesota Wild and the Vancouver Canucks. And you guys have probably seen a lot of the stories about this. It was a 10-7 game. So essentially you had the Vikings beating the Lions and not the Detroit Lions. If you follow CFL at all, you know that the BC Lions are based out of Vancouver. The hilarity was just how off the wall this game was. It was certainly wild, pun intended, to say the absolute least, as you had the Wild put up 7 goals in the third period. Now, this was a game that Vancouver led 2-1 after 1. They led 5-3 after 2, and then Minnesota just absolutely flipped the switch and made a little bit of history in the process here. It was something where you saw 3 different players, 2 from the Wild, 1 from Vancouver, get hat tricks. 2 different players had 6-point games. You had several others have 4-point games. It was the scoring was rapid and often, but yet the funny thing about that is that outside of the goal totals, it was a very, very close matchup for most of the game. Minnesota only led 27-24 in shots after the game ended. It was 22-21 in hits for Vancouver. Vancouver did take 7 penalties and had 14 penalty minutes. Minnesota only had 4 penalties for 8 minutes. But then you actually look into what happened with those penalties. Vancouver was 1 of 3 on the power play. Minnesota was 4 out of 6. The block shots were 23-17 in favor of Minnesota. The takeaways and giveaways were roughly nominal. But it was something that you never know which way this game was going to tilt because it was so back and forth through most of the afternoon. It was 2-0 Vancouver 13 minutes into the game after goals by Ian Cole just 2:50 into the game, and JT Miller scored with just over 13 minutes into the period. Joel Eriksson Ek got the Wild on the board with just 50 seconds left in the first period, and Ek was one of those guys that had 3 goals. Then you had Elias Pettersson and JT Miller score in the first half of the period. Now, again, that was Miller's second. Matt Boldy closed the Wild to within 2 at 4-2 at 11 minutes in. Miller got the hat trick 14:30 into the second period. So there's the first one. Then Matt Zuccarello, again for the Wild, scoring in the final minute of the period, pushing closing the gap to 5-3 going into the third. And then Minnesota just took over. Eriksson Ek with his second on the power play, 30 seconds in. Kirill Kaprizov on the power play, a minute 23 in. We're knotted up at 5. Eriksson Ek completes the hat trick on the power play. So again, that's 3 consecutive power play goals for the Wild. It's 4 consecutive power play goals for them, going from 5-2, and now we're at 6-5 Minnesota. Marco Rossi scores his 15th of the year. We've got 7-5 Vancouver. Kaprizov gets his second. We've got 8-5 And this is actually now just 5:12 into the period. So you had the Wild score six goals in a span of just over 6 minutes here. Now, this was also something that uh, the Wild, the span of 5:45 in the third period, it was the fastest in the NHL since Washington put up six in just under 5 minutes in the better part of 25 years. The Wild also, with this victory, and I'll get back to the goal scoring here in a moment, actually now won the season series against the Vancouver Canucks. So getting back to the scoring here, we're at 8-5 now for Minnesota. Nikita Zadorov closes it to 8-6, 8:26 in. Brock Besser notches his 31st of the year at 17:52. We've got an 8-7 game with 2 minutes and 8 seconds to go. And then Jonas Brodin gets an empty netter. We got 9-7, and then Kaprizov finishes out the hat trick at 19:58, just 2 seconds left in the game. So for our third hat trick of the night, a 10-7 game, it's actually hilarious when a team gets to 10 goals, but to get to a game that was so back and forth that saw uh, Vancouver have a 2-goal lead, Vancouver had a 3-goal lead, and then you saw Minnesota storm back and get a 3-goal lead, and then it got closed to 1 where it was still within striking distance, and then Minnesota put up 2 empty netters to restore the 3-goal lead, get to double digits. And Vancouver's still with that crooked number up of 7 themselves. It was something that also saw not only Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek have a hat trick, they also had 3 assists. So there's your 6-point nights right there. Max Zuccarello and Matt Boldy both had a goal and 3 assists for 4-point nights themselves. Again, the JT Miller hat trick. Casey DeSmith was in net for all 8 of the Vancouver goals allowed. Naturally, he was on the bench for the final 2 empty netters with under 2 minutes to go. And then you actually had Philip Gustafsson benched early in the third period or just coming out of the second period for Minnesota in favor of Marc-Andre Fleury, who and then ended up giving up a couple of goals himself. Let's be honest here. It's Gustafsson only had 6 saves on 11 shots and played 39-47, and then Fleury came in the final period, gave up 2 goals on 6 shots. I'm sorry, 2 goals on 8 shots. Himself, again, not a very good save percentage. DeSmith let in 8 on 25 shots. So DeSmith for Vancouver, a 680 save percentage. Gustafsson was a 688, and Fleury was 750. And to have a 750 save percentage in the NHL means that you're going to be riding the bench and probably sent back down to the AHL for some conditioning at that particular point. But if Fleury coming in relief is the best one among those, and Fleury's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, just shows you how chaotic this game was. The Vancouver loss didn't really hurt them as much as the win helped Minnesota. Vancouver, still with 80 points, is the best team in the Western Conference right now by 4 points over the Dallas Stars. They've got a 10-point lead over defending champion Vegas after kind of hitting the skids a little bit where Vegas kind of climbed into first place. But the win definitely helped Minnesota because it got Minnesota to 26, 23, and 6 at 58 points, got them into a tie with Nashville, but more importantly, pulled them to within 2 points of the St. Louis Blues for the final wild card spot. And the Blues are only 4 points behind Los Angeles for that top wild card spot. So this could be a situation if, for example, this was the final game of the year. Minnesota would have lost out on the playoffs, and the winner would have actually had to go to Vancouver. So you've got a scenario right now where Vancouver running away and hiding in that Pacific Division is going to draw one of the 2 wild card spots. It's just all a matter of if it was going to be Los Angeles in their own division, if Vancouver gets caught by Dallas, or if Vancouver gets the number 1 seed and then gets the lower of the wild card spot, which could have been St. Louis, Nashville, or Minnesota right now, because Minnesota and Nashville with those 58 points are 8 clear of Arizona, who have actually lost, I want to say, 10 straight. So Arizona's really not, in a situation to catch anybody, and especially Minnesota now going to be hosting Toronto, coming off a big win over St. Louis yesterday as well, in another impressive game. And then that Buffalo and Anaheim game I was actually watching for a point. It was Buffalo jumping out to a big lead. I'm sorry, Buffalo jumping out to a lead. Anaheim coming back in that one as well. But again, the impressive ability of not just, this was not a situation of the goaltenders just not having it. It's just something that the shooters just could not miss, because Vancouver had previously given up their season high was giving up 6 to the Devils back on December 5th, and then Minnesota pots a touchdown and an extra point in the third period alone is just showing you how impressive things were in this game. And then also just how teams are now starting to find their groove and flip the switch coming out of the break. They've got their sea legs back underneath them after the long delay. Some teams, like the Blues, were off for as many as 10 days after that. So let me know what you guys think. Did you catch this game? Do you think that Vancouver is going to run and hide from Dallas now that they've kind of got themselves a little bit clear of Vegas with just over 2 months left in the regular season? Who do you think is getting moved at the deadline here in the next couple of weeks? Do you think one of these teams goes out and tries to add somebody? I will be back with you guys before too long. Wise Guy Sports Show, Saturday nights on our YouTube page. And this week, we will actually be coming to you an hour early at 8 p.m. We will not be doing a 3-hour show tonight, although the last couple of weeks, you'd be hard-pressed not to figure that we wouldn't stretch that far. But we will be back with you on the Wise Guys this Saturday night. Everybody take care.